Afternoon, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the Midnight Suns roster that I'm taking to Lunchmeat. So, I am still a convocation player. I'm going to play convocation in the TTS cuts finals. But I have been messing around with Midnight Suns as just kind of a second affiliation to play since I've had so many convocation games. And, I was talking to Collar about it, who invented the Mystique Brotherhood Cabal thing that no one likes to play against. So we were talking about Suns and how we do think there's potential there, and we've been talking about it more, and he kind of like has motivated me to say, hey, let's try it in the lunch meet, let's put it out there. He has doubly named it Midnight Suns, and so now I feel like I have to try it before he is the only one that makes it popular, though he has more test games with it. So anyway, I'll go through the roster I'm taking, some thoughts behind it. Keep in mind, I've only played 3 games of Midnight Suns. It's not like I have this bank of information. Some of it's going off feel, what I think is good, what I want to test. I'm very much a proponent of playing games. I have 100 convocation games, and I'm still learning things. I'm still thinking about things. And so this idea that you can play 10, 15 games and everything be set, I don't buy it. And so I think the only thing you can do is keep playing. Now, I think it's at some point you need to get to a roster that you're like, okay, I'm going to put this on the table and then start iterating on small changes from there and understand that, you won't be able to test everything in 10 games. There will be matchups where you just don't play a certain model, but it might need to be there because of certain situations. And so that takes time and stuff. There's convocation models I barely play, but they're there for a very specific reason if it does come up. Anyway, let's just get into it. So high level, I had a video on bumps and whatnot. So I think there's a couple things, like taking a step back, that I want to approach Midnight Suns with. One is the idea of, I don't think I'm ever going to go leaderless. I don't have any... I'm not saying it's bad. I know some people do it on certain situations, but I have very little want to go leaderless. I think the list is built around having bump in it, and it's like, okay, the only other reason you would play Midnight Suns and go leaderless is because Siege of Darkness is such a good card, but I'm just not. That's not how I want to play. I don't want to play leaderless. Maybe eventually it'll be the thing to do once in a while, similar to flipping the convocation leadership or not taking Strange, but it's just not my first goal. So when I play, I'm going to have zero thoughts of going non-blade. Secondly, iHawk is obviously in the list. iHawk is a strong model. It is not an iHawk first list. The stuff I'm taking is not with the idea of I need to be able to play iHawk at every threat level and it be perfect, stuff like that. I think having the threat of him could be very important. I think there are some teams that will use him, and I haven't used him yet. I've actively tried not to pick him. I will if I feel like I need to. I'll get there. I'm just kind of... I don't think he's to the level of Thanos and those other big models that kind of annoyed people, Malekith. But he is a little bit annoying in my opinion, to where... I don't know. I just don't want to use him a ton right away. Similar to when I played Sam without Hulk for a while. Get used to the other pieces. He's there. Now I think there's some really cool things he can do and really strong places for him, especially with the bump and, all that good, and Siege and Bats. So those are kind of, I won't say rules, but 2 things I'm kind of thinking of high level. So starting with the roster, Midnight Suns has some pretty good people, and there's 6 affiliated models in this: Blade, iHawk, Voodoo, Iron Fist, Cat, and Wong. So I think Blade, iHawk, Wong, and Voodoo. I mean, none of these are really, I think, big. Oh my gosh, how could you take this and not the others? If we look at who else is available in Midnight Suns, right? Where's Midnight Suns? There it is, right? So who didn't I take? I didn't take Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange, and then probably, I think the new Black Panther is going to be in Midnight Suns, who I think he'll be a very interesting pick to put in. I can't really talk too much about him now because not only do I not have enough games on Midnight Suns, but he's not out to really make that decision of putting him in. I think Doctor Strange is never going to get into this roster. I just don't foresee him ever being something I want. Ghost Rider, I think I didn't put him in my current roster because I want to test out Red Skull 2. And I know that's a slot that could be Ghost Rider, could be something else. Moon Knight, I'm not interested in at the moment. I think I have enough threes, especially if with the new Black Panther, I think he would still be even lower on my list. I like Iron Fist, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. And so we're sitting here and we're saying, okay, Blade, Eyehawk, Wong makes sense. Voodoo, I think, makes a lot of sense. You know, we've talked about Voodoo in Convocation with defensive bumps and some of the other synergies there. I think here it's all the same where, you know, being able to bump on this size of a base, I think can turn Voodoo into a really good brawler. You know, he essentially has 9-inch range on his attacks. If you bump early, he tends to be a little bit more flush with power. If he gets going, the more attacks he makes, he usually makes a lot of power because he's either rolling a skull. Like, he's typically on a 5-dice builder is getting a skull, a wild, or some form of damage, right? Not always, but a lot of the time. So he's very good with generating the power. He's great with siege. He's great with bats. In fact, interestingly enough, bats has new synergy in Midnight Suns with at least Voodoo, because before the throw was off of the, you know, it wasn't a trigger. It was just something you could do. But now with bats, Voodoo can throw on a siege turn with his double hit. So you have some displacement that you can actually control with the card and not need to be within 2 range to throw. So I think that's kind of cool. Like, you can set up siege turns where, like, you could almost guarantee, as long as you get 1 hit, you can guarantee the throw, and you can throw somebody towards you. It's omnidirectional. And then you could, like, hit him with somebody else if you wanted, like an Immortal Hulk. There's a lot of little things like that you can do. So he's a great siege target. Just a good brawler. I mean, he's not as... We've talked about this before. He's not as overpowered as he is, but you don't see him as much. So, you know, there's that give and take of... Sure, he's not as strong as he used to be, but he's still pretty strong. He's great with bump. And he's affiliated, right? If you want to put Black Hat before Iron Fist in this particular thing, you can talk about how, if you look at it, you're like, oh, wow, Eyehawk seems to be a big bad of Midnight Suns, and he can go control games himself. But Midnight Suns have 2 steals in faction to play like that kind of game. Black Cat's here. She doesn't get as much out of the bump, in my opinion. But she's still just a long-moving 3-threat that has a lot of defensive tech when it comes to no rerolls or no exploding crits, so she can safely go pick up stuff. And then, I mean, they're both affiliated. So, yes, you have to take Blade, and I don't have any other steals, but you could take Rhinos. You can still play, like, that kind of movement-based extract game if you want. Iron Fist is my... I mean, Wong is a pretty obvious one. We won't even talk about Wong. He can heal. He's great for Eyehawk with healing and ruining staggers. Yeah, he's Wong. He's a 2-threat affiliated. You take him in your roster. Iron Fist is one I think gets a lot of shit. I like Iron Fist. I liked Iron Fist back, and this isn't to say, oh, I knew he was always good. I think he was good back in the day before I started. But when I first started playing Sam after the Crisis changed, I played him over Luke because, and I was coming from, you know, other games. So to me, the thing that I like about Iron Fist, I don't know if I even talked about this in another video, but the thing that draws me to him, I mean, it's very clearly Iron Fist, right? The Iron Fist, the activate somebody attack. It's just such a impactful attack on a 3, right? So you can think about a lot of 3s in the game, and some of the best ones are either very greatly statted or, you know, yeah, like Lizard is just a really good brick of stats with a throw who's tanky and he's pretty fast, right? Or you have long movers that are very fast. Or Zemo has very good damage and speed and stuff like that. And so there's 3s that kind of get overshadowed because they're just like a bad version of Zemo or like a bad Lizard, something like that. And I think that Iron Fist actually brings something that is unique to a 3-threat. I'm pretty sure no other 3s have this, or at least as easily as he can do it. Like this whole idea that a 3-threat could just activate your Thanos or Hulk if you play it wrong. Like, the threat of that, in my opinion, is worth a lot. Like, it's hard for me to fathom that he isn't better or more used. sometimes. Because when I play against him, the fact that you have to think about this stupid shit is so obnoxious. Now listen, a lot of times a 9 dice attack can kill somebody. In fact, I think doing the attack on somebody who is... Like, I don't think it's done enough on activated people because it does throw them. It's a sizeless throw. Yeah, it's a sizeless throw and they get stagger. And depending on the model, like, that could just be as good as activating them. And you don't have to give a priority and stuff like that. So I definitely think that is maybe a little bit underutilized, especially if they don't have brace up and you're like throwing a Hulk small into somebody on their team and getting him off a point. But the point being is that he's affiliated. He comes with a great card in Heroes for Hire. Sure, he can be picked apart a little bit more by long-range attacks or mystic attacks. But, like, he's a 3-threat. Like, a lot of 3-threats die. Like, I think there's this notion, like, sure, Cat has a lot of defensive tech, but sometimes they just die. And, like, big bads kill a lot of things. Whether or not they have a single reroll or not, or something like that. So, this idea to me that, like, he's a 3-threat at the end of the day. Sometimes he's just a body, and he's a body that has some cool things. Having 2 power, always generating another power has a lot of uses. The fact that he can place on his flying kick, he can get very far, especially with bump. You can kick somebody, place next to him, go off of him. A lot of the theme of the Midnight Suns roster you're going to see is a lot of movement and attacking, right? So, like, even Blade, to some extent, on his spender, can move and attack, whether it's elusive triggers. I haven't got to the actual ones that can move and attack yet. I think it's the couple splashes that actually are worth talking about. So anyway, that's the convocation models. Okay. He's pretty cool with Siege. One thing I like about Siege with him is, like, you can set up in a way that, like, you could do your attack with Siege and, like, get on a point later in the turn and contest something. Like, you could almost put him... Like, you could put him between some things and then say, all right, I have the last knowing you have the last activation, you can play Siege then and do his flying kick and then land next to them and contest something that maybe that you wouldn't have been able to before, win a point like that. The same with Voodoo. Like, there could be Siege turns where you actually do it at the end of the turn, where between Iron Fist and Voodoo, and even Hulk to some extent if you had them all in your list, which you probably wouldn't have all of them very often, you could... throw somebody off a point. You could put Danny into a good position. iHawk could throw somebody. Now those are triggers, but if you have bats up, the likelihood of hitting, a throw on the Voodoo and iHawk with between one of them isn't that bad. So you got some cool things you can do there. So again, I don't think any of this is like super shocking. Yeah, she's just a great model with steel, blah, blah. So now we talk about splashes. So I have 4 splashes in here. I don't think any of them are... Only one I think is like, okay, we're definitely going to take her almost a lot of the games, and I think she would never be dropped out of Midnight Suns, or like, why even play Suns without her would be Gwenom. And we can talk about her first. So Gwenom has the obvious thing is on her Symbiote Spider technique, so she gets a long move if you move this turn or place, so... it is what it is, right? You get to bump, and then you attack, and you can long move, and then you can long move again by attacking again. So, in theory, she can get a 1-inch place and 2 long moves and 2 attacks in a single turn. The rotation that you can do is really big. It also provides... she has this without bump, but... So, she's one of those models that, like, is pretty cool on paper. And I think some of the stuff that she does in Midnight Sun, she can do elsewhere, but I think... Suns turns her up a little bit. So, like, here's an example, right? You can long move, attack somebody, turn 1, and get another long move and advance to, like, a point. So, like, you could, centers, you'll see I take centers, and here's, like, a reason, right? If you set up across from a senator, I'm 90% sure that a long move plus a small base, so you're getting 2¼ inches for 2 bases. I'm pretty sure that a long mover across from a senator can walk and be within range 3 of anybody on the other side of the senator who picked up the other one. And if that's true, she can... You don't need Midnight Suns to do this. You could walk up, pick up the senator, attack somebody who's on the other side, and then move to a secure with the trigger on the long move. And it could be a D, it could be back, it could be whatever. But it's not that. Like, anyone can do that, right? So she gives two things. One, if needed, depending on the turn, she can give you that little bit of extra range. Like, if you're just out of 3, the difference between bump. This is where I talk about bumping a lot, right? Bumping is only a 1-inch place. But a lot of spots in Marvel Crisis Protocol, just the way things line up with ranges and, like, how tight the game can be in a sense, a 1-inch bump one bump can essentially be the difference between a move action or a attack, right? And so you're essentially, in some cases, not all, you're essentially paying 1 power to get another attack action, right? So for example, if you move long, right, and you're just out of 3, so if you're within 4 of somebody, you can bump and then attack them and get the long move, and essentially you've just given yourself a 1-inch place and an attack for 1 power, right? So it's stuff like that where if you're just, we'll talk about Red Skull 3, but if you're just out of something, if you can bump into it, like, you basically save yourself a bunch. And just the way this nature of this game, how the ranges aren't that crazy. I talked about in the other video, if you have a range 3 character and they can bump, unless they're blocked in some way or the enemy is range 5, you can pretty much always bump and get within range of your attack. So, like, what used to be the case of, you're range 2, I'm going to attack you from range 3, it doesn't help in this case unless you're a medium base, but let's say range 4 is better, because that's more commonly, like, the thing. But, I'm range 4, you're range 3, suck it, I'm going to hit you and you have to walk and attack me. You can now bump and attack them. And so she takes that to the max, more so, where you can bump, attack, double long move, rotate around, do some damage, be annoying. She has cool things with, like, her clap back. She has a size 3 medium throw. She's tankier than she looks because of the 2 rerolls, so she's not great against energy, whatever. Like, she's still a model that, in my opinion, uses power pretty well. And I think being 6'7" is really annoying. Like, I value, personally, wounds a little bit more than other things, because more health equals more power, right? So let's just say she was a 5'5" with DR2 or something, right? She'll survive probably longer, but she won't gain as much power in the process of dying. You know what I mean? If you pick, like, what's the value of DR1 versus health and stuff like that, there is a little bit to be said of, like, I just rather just get the power and be able to do fun things. So I think she just, she can just turn. And the fact that, like, but if you bump, like, where she goes to the next level is basically turn, she can just bump, attack, and get double long moves. So she gets 2 attacks, 2 long moves, and a bump just naturally. And I think that has a lot of play in it. We'll see that in another character. So she's definitely in there, and I'm going to try to use her a lot. Hela, so just the nature of potentially Eyes on the Prize going away, and just even without it, the fact that you don't need to take Eye on the Prize if you do this, having a Hela or a Bill or even a Red Skull 2 can do it, that can bump and grab a midline and still move back, has a lot of value. She, for Midnight Suns, is probably better than Bill. Like, so she has the bleed synergy, but she's both ways, right? So she's good at giving bleed, which is helpful for Blade, but she also uses bleed well on her Reign of Hell. So, 7 dice, physical, not counting wilds, can be really good, especially on people that, like, reverse pierce or something like that. I don't know if it actually stops reverse pierces. That's a good question. Should we look that up real quick? Let's just look that up real quick. I don't know if it stops reverse pierce. Strange. I guess I could have picked the other one. Let me view him. No. Okay, so it doesn't stop reverse pierce. Does it stop Ultron? Sorry for the tangent. I just want to see. Yeah, so they don't count for successes. So you can still reverse pierce the attacks, but you wouldn't. They wouldn't count as blocks for you. So it still removes blocks. So it removes the chance that, like, Strange can, like, super spike you and stuff. And the point being is, it's good with bleed. She's also very mobile with bump. Obviously Bill would be too, but Like, she has a lot of ability to bump, do her Death's Embrace, do a move, attack. Like, she can rotate Ds and other maps like Peta Flips very well with bump and other things. So I think her speed and stuff, just, she's the fun one to try at least now. It could always be Bill. But you want her for the ability to safe grab, especially like I said, if turn one stuff starts going slower, eyes is removed, and some of the other things are changed. Like Midnight Suns might have a little bit of advantage because they have a lot of good turn one plays. I also really like her and Bill because I talked about this. If you take senators, you can grab a senator and bump to a side D. And you can grab the enemy senator and bump back, so you can do some aggressive senator plays. That's why I bring senators personally. So Red Skull too. I just like him as a model. I haven't played him in a while. I like grunt characters. He seems to be one of them. I mean, this could be Ultron. Ultron. I talked about medium movers, and so Ultron falls into that. And okay, it doesn't get you. He can't safe grab, and Red Skull can. But what it does give you is, essentially, turn one is it gives you a free move, right? We talked about intrusions and D shapes and how important it is or how impactful it can be if you can get to a side D without moving, right? Without moving twice. And so for long base, like Cat, for example, or Red Skull, like the Hela, Gwenom, the fact that you can... Now, Gwenom doesn't matter as much because she can attack and get a free move, so it's not a big deal. But I guess what I'm saying is the fact that you can get to the mid and then still attack if you want is really big. So if somebody's on a side, like before, you have to make the choice. I'm either going to walk to the side point, double walk to it, or I'm going to walk and attack and walk the next turn. But now you can walk, bump, get on the point, and attack, and you basically get a move action for free. All that being said, he uses that well. He can do a safe grab. I also like that he could potentially walk up, bump onto the mid, cut himself, do a blitz strike, and then he gets the power to, say, pick up something that was there. So you don't even have to do it first. You can do it after the fact. Now you wouldn't be able to do your advanced trigger too well. I guess you could walk backwards if you wanted. And I don't know how often you hit the triggers, to be completely fair with you. But, and then, okay, next turn you're gonna have to cut yourself. Yeah, right, because you'll gain 1 power. You can cut yourself for 3, attack, get the power. You can double attack with legs if you don't pick anything up on the turn 2 or don't bump. But people might attack you. And also, like, the fact that you have Wong in affiliation, like, I think kind of helps. It's kind of dumb a little bit because the grunts can't sit on the back because Wong's going to sit on the back probably. That's not even dumb because there's other things. It's not always D shapes and whatnot. But it is nice that, like, if your whole plan is to walk, bump, cut, attack, cut, that if you don't die in between it, Wong can heal it back. It always gives Wong something to do, even turn 1. Like, if you don't want to give a power to somebody, you could just do what I just said. You could walk. It's also kind of cool because, like, you can set up pseudo safe grabs where, like, it won't be the immediate turn 1. But on the senator thing I talked about, is that even a good example? You can do things where if, like, you give Wong power, somebody a power later, like, you can still do, like, decent stuff, I guess is the point I'm trying to make is. Like, I don't even know what I'm trying to say on that case. Nah, I got nothing. Anyway, you don't have to do it right away. Anyway, I think he's cool. Do I think he's the greatest model for this roster? I don't know. I want to try. He's one that I just want to try. And we know he's a pretty good model. He's kind of been forgotten about. Kraven is probably the spiciest potential splash. And so this is something, you know, we being Collar and I had, what do we have in here? Do we have a 3-threat? I don't even think so. I think he talked about a Hood and I didn't like it. And we had Bullseye in here who I still think it's potentially having a second 2-threat can be really good. And then we're talking about 3s and we're like, okay, who has bleed synergy and dice fixing? Zemo does technically, but he doesn't get much out of the bump compared to the others. Though he's okay with it getting to the midline and getting a free attack. So I think there's always uses there. He talked about Armin Zola. And then, you know, I think he came up with, he threw out the idea for Kraven, and you know, we talked through it, and I think it makes a lot of sense to try. So I said this on a Discord, but I'm going to go through my reasonings again. So Craven he's a 5 health, 3/3/3. He does get a defensive reroll. Okay, so he's not breaking the world from a defensive text point, but I'm not really like, I don't care as much about that, personally speaking. Because I think a lot of defensive tech, depending on what it is, you're going to get blown apart anyway. So just accept it as long as the rest of his kit is pretty good. So, so he has a Curry Strike. So, like, the play pattern, quote, play pattern of Craven seems to be he wants to get his Curry Strike into the elusive, into doing a spear thrust, into getting a free medium move, right? So he's going to get a 5 dicer into a 7 dicer, and then get a medium move afterwards. So all that, okay. So and then he has Corner the Beast, which is actually kind of a funny superpower to hurt people that move, and he can do it unlimited times to other people, which is kind of cool. I also like that you can do it on somebody who's already activated, and it's active till the next turn. So they could, like, if you think they're going to rotate and then you put it on them and they want to double walk somewhere, they're going to take 2 damage. So I think that's really cool, especially if you do it on somebody like, and they have priority, and you're like, all right, you either go with this person and leave, or I'm going to kill you. But that being said, Expert Tracker is another good one. An additional die to anybody, anywhere, and it can be used as many times as you want, depending on how much power you get. And he has 1 offensive reroll, so the attacks I mentioned above were built in. So like, I'll give you an example why. So he has a built-in bleed on his Curry Strike, which is weirdly synergistic with Blade and Hela and stuff. So it's not bad to have. But the big thing is, so now his play pattern, you want to be in range 2 of somebody, hit them, hope you get the elusive, then you get the spear thrust, and so you've gotten a small advance, a medium advance, and you've done 2 attacks, right? But all that hinges on being within range 2 to start and hitting a wild. When you have bump, you can, so if you're in range, so now a couple things. One, you can be within range 3 of somebody, bump within range 2, do the Curry Strike, and then do the spear thrust. And you don't have to hit the elusive trigger to get the secondary move on the spear thrust. So that's one. So that's big. So the one thing that's weird is if people are attacking from range 3, what are you doing as Craven? You can do a 3 dice attack. Let's just put it back. So I'm going to attack you from range 3 on Craven. You can't do any of your cool kit. You can walk, spear thrust, and get the fuck out of there, right? You basically advance M and get out of there. Unless you can somehow get yourself in range. You could walk and do your Curry Strike and do elusive, but you wouldn't get, and it's probably not even worth it. I don't even know what his play pattern is in a natural sense. With bump, there's a couple things. One, you kind of turn on this whole, I'm within 3, I'm going to bump within 2, attack you, do all the stuff. But also turn on the extra play pattern of, let's say somebody attacks you from range 4, and you somehow survive it, right? You could bump towards them, get within range 3, spear thrust them to medium move, spear thrust them again to medium move. And so now what would have been a walk, throw a 4 dice attack, and then move M into, so you basically that turns you to a free attack. I mean, that's really like, bump can turn on a free attack in both cases. And so, like, a play pattern, I hate that word, why do I keep using it? Phrase, a thing of like bump, attack, similar to Gwenum, is not bad on him. Like, it's really not. Like, you get double M moves. You can rotate he could rotate a D and get 2 attacks still, depending on where the enemy is, right? And it's 4 dice with a reroll. Sure, it's not great, but you could also, if you have power, you could expert tracker them. So if you had 4 power to start, which you might not, you could expert tracker them and then get 5 dice with a reroll. Is not bad for him, and he's gaining power while he does it. Also, like, expert tracker works on Siege of Darkness turn, so you can go with Craven, do something, and depending on how much power you get, expert tracker people who are next to your other models, and then turn on Siege of Darkness, and everybody, you get an extra die on 2 or 3 attacks. Not only on the Siege of Darkness turn are you getting extra dice, but when those models actually go, you get extra dice as well. So I think all that combines really, like, turns on his kit. And that's what I think you're looking for in some Midnight Sun splashes is, back to the Red Skull thing, right? He's range 3. so people can attack him at range 4. But if he gets a bump, he can more easily get to people like that are just out of range. Like there's a lot of things in this game where like the distance between 2 points, if you're both standing on it, you're going to be out of range 3. But if you get a bump into attack, you can get around it. And so I think some of these models really take advantage of the movement, shenanigans, and distances, and just having strong affiliated models and cards. Okay, Blade isn't the greatest model in the world. I don't think he's as terrible as people think. Sure, he's not the greatest 4-threat in the world. He has a 5-dice Mystic Pierce katana. He has a throwing glaives that has something. He has a pretty good spender if you get bleed on people. He's immune to staggered, stuff like that. He also comes with one of the greatest leaderships in the game, in my opinion. I think it's underratedly good, and I've talked about that in another video. Card-wise, I don't think anything super shocking. You're going to take Siege. I think you're going to take Bath, Sack, Brace. Okay, you could take Patch Up, but I think because this isn't a iHawk first team, Sack does a fine job. It's also pretty good with Gwenum with the clapback thing where you can sack. If somebody attacks her, you can sack to somebody else, and after they get hit, she gets to go. And I just like Sack. I almost always play this. One Blow All is great for iHawk, even though he's not the main plan. Having one of his better cards is good. Heroes for Hire, again, great card with Iron Fist. Fallback is just always good to have. I took Cosmic Obliteration because I had Red Skull. I have no other character-specific cards that are worth taking. I hate Mission Objective, but Collar made me take it, and I didn't have anything else to replace it with. Most likely, it's very rarely going to be played. If you think about all the other cards I have, I think it's just there, and maybe in case I play a Rhino and I want to take it. Mark for Death, because fuck webs, I guess. I mean, it's probably not a bad card to have just in your back pocket. If you play against webs and stuff, screw it. Crisis real quick. We'll start with these over here. Skrulls, Virus, Mutant. So Senators kind of, I think Skrulls and Legacy they just kind of feel good. I know people sometimes like Montesi for 18 and being slow. So there's this idea of even if you're playing iHawk or playing like things that aren't slow, there's this claim to be made, I guess, from some old player. Forgot his name. Some Australian guy. Morgan, I guess, used to have the saying of, if you play slower scoring, you have more room to outplay your opponents, while playing really fast while it does advantage some teams, there's less room to outplay people, and sometimes you can just get spiked and die. So the longer the game goes, the more room you have to outplay people. I think it's very fair. I mean, those are the 3 extracts I take with my convocation. I'm very used to them. I think the reason I take Senators, even though it's not slow, is I actually think that Midnight Suns has a lot of bullshit on Senators. I think they have a lot of movement shenanigans with like Gwenum, Hela, Iron Fist, Blade not so much, where like you can really take advantage of the only getting one move. So like Gwenum, for example, could easily double walk across the board with her Senator, and they also pick them up really well. So like I said, Hela being able to walk and bump on a side D, Gwenum could pick one up and attack and gets to somebody's back F turn 1. You can kind of leave people a little bit stranded, and you have 2 steals in Black Cat and Voodoo, so there's always going to be something there to be said. I like it, so I'm going to test it. I think Hammers is another one that Collar had that I didn't have. We're going a little all over the place. On the secure side, we have Demons, Mutant Madmen, Riots. So again, I'm not really sure which ones are best. I think Intrusions is always one in there. I think Demons, we only have one immune to Incinerate, but, iHawk can be good there. Blade, Pseudo Incinerate, immune. It's just only 3 points. Madmen, again, I haven't played the Madmen one with it yet. I think just being fast and can be decently on pay to flips. I mean, Danny's not bad being able to rotate a lot. Blade has 4 physical, which is fine. Hela's pretty good on those. Gwenum's 4 physical and very fast. So I think we have some decent play into that. And then Riots, we put that in, even though it's probably potentially a better Webs or Hellfire one. I just think we're very good. First of all, we have a pretty solid 17 of like Blade, iHawk, not iHawk, fuck iHawk, not iHawk. It's like Blade, Iron Fist. I guess you could do Voodoo, like Hela Gwenum, for example. So that's an example one. Blade, Iron Fist, Wong, Hela Venom. And you're just very mobile You can do other ones too. I haven't tried them all yet. But like you're just very mobile in that situation on a D shape. Like I said, Hela and Gwen can walk and bump and get from D to D, which means you basically get a free attack every time. Or Gwenum can just double attack and get it. So like where somebody would take 2 attacks to rotate, like I'll put it this way: if you wanted to rotate Hela and Gwenum without bump, you would be only getting like 1 attack total, and in this case, you could get potentially 3 attacks and stuff like that. Danny's good at rotating stuff like that, so we just feel like we can take advantage of the rotations. I can see other teams being decent on there, like 9, 14. Nah, you can't take the team otherwise. I mean, you could do stuff with Skull if you only want to run. No, you couldn't. You wouldn't be able to run Gwenum there. Anyway, we're trying it. I don't know what's good and what's bad necessarily there. We're just trying these, and they seem like they'd be okay. But yeah, there we go. We'll see how it does. Thanks for listening.